Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Thursday, January 5th, the first Political Roundtable for the new year, so Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of the Times. Back with me today, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of the Times, and Times columnist Mark Kiesling, bringing you the latest developments, plenty of developments to talk about. Let's start locally. Mark, you want to...
We're sorry we had to leave you alone last
That's
week,
all right.
Robert, but...
Tom,
know,
Mayor McDermott filled in ably for you. So
it was quality over quantity. So,
so anyway, but Mark, you have some interesting, I think, things you want to talk about regarding the federal case against Tom Philpot,
against Lake County
Coroner.
Tom Philpot, which dates back actually to his time as clerk, and I think it's been hashed and rehashed what he's been accused of, taking federal money from the child support program. It was designated for one thing, and he used it to kind of reward his employees and himself.
And he's maintained that he didn't do anything that he thought was wrong. That he was told he could do this.
He said he was told he could do that.
Yeah.
He's paid the money back.
Yes.
The question, of course, is if you walk into a Walmart and walk out with 10 CDs stuck under your pocket, and they catch you, you say, "Oh, gee, I'll pay for them, or I'll put them back." Are they going to look? How are they looked at? Well, Philpot's trial has been delayed twice now. Once on Philpot's account and once on the account of the prosecution. You see this a lot in county courts. Lake County, Cook County, delays are granted with almost alarming frequency. But in the federal system, the judges are pretty strict about getting this thing moving. Now, the judge in this case has granted 2 continuances, and it's led more than one person to speculate, and I'm not talking about myself, but it's led more than one person to speculate that this could mean that Tom Philpot is cooperating with the government. And I don't think, for my part, I don't think that would surprise me at all. I think he would.
I think it'd be a smart move on his part.
I think it would be a smart move on his part. I think he knows that they've got him, where they want him, and he's going to do what he can to, minimize the damage.
Yeah, he's an attorney himself, so I mean, he's no stranger to the process.
He is an attorney. He knows what he's up against. He knows the federal government doesn't indict based on rumors. So the question becomes, Philpot was one of Bob Cantrell's disciples. Cantrell being the former Republican chairman of the county, of East Chicago, turned Democratic operative. So Cantrell knows a lot about where, what happened, when things happened, and to whom they happened. But he has maintained silence and he himself is serving a federal prison term for public corruption. But what better way to get at what Cantrell knows than to go to someone who is extremely close to him. Philpot publicly, and I was there, Philpot publicly credited Cantrell with engineering his victory in more than one campaign. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Will Philpot take what is probably the smart road and say, okay, whatever you guys need, I'm willing to provide.
Well, let's shift gears here from the wild and woolly world of local politics to the wild and woolly world of state politics. We had just yesterday, Wednesday, was supposed to be the opening day of the General Assembly. didn't quite go as planned, Doug.
Right. Democrats decided not to go to Urbana this time, Urbana, Illinois. I should point out for people who know that there is a Urbana, Indiana, not that it has a hotel they could hang out at. But
I didn't know there was an Urbana, Indiana.
There is.
My goodness, I've lived in the state for
off of Highway 13, as I recall. In any case, the Northeast Indiana, the Democrats went into caucus and did that again today. And I don't know House Speaker Brian Bosma, who's of course a Republican. The Republicans have the majority. He was going to try to bring him back into session at 2:30 region time. And as we're filming this, it's about 2:15. Yeah. So, you know, who knows how that's going to shake
And basically, by Democrats holding up in this meeting, they prevent a quorum from being called. The House Speaker, Brian Bosma, doesn't have enough lawmakers on hand to hold a quorum, thus to open the session and also to introduce right-to-work legislation, which is what this is all about.
And you know, what I'm curious about...
I'm sorry, Doug.
I was going to say, what I'm curious about is, you know, Mark, Robert, what do you think of the strategy of you know, trying to bowl through the right-to-work legislation that's so controversial right from the get-go and trying to put it on a fast track? I mean, is it smart to do that, you think, or
no,
dumb idea? Or?
Frankly, I think it's a big mistake. Yeah. It's so controversial that this is not something I don't think you want to start out with. It's regardless of which way it goes, it's going to leave a bad taste in some people's mouths. And you know, I guess there's always the notion that, well, if we do it early enough on in the session, by the time it comes for re-election, people will have forgotten about it. Right. I don't think people are going to forget about it.
I don't think so.
Right.
The question is, you know, what's the is this a good strategy to get it done, and then the Democrats are able to get their agenda dealt with? Or?
It may be a good strategy to get it done, but it's not necessarily a good strategy in the long run for the Republicans, because I think they run the risk of you know, as we've seen in neighboring states, Wisconsin, Ohio, overreach, where you get this backlash. You know, if you go too far, and we saw the rules, the attempt to change the rules in terms of who could enter the state house and protests around the state house, that sparked an instant backlash, and then we saw Governor Daniels say, "Oh well, never mind." He just pulled an Emily Latella there and said, "Never mind, let's go back to the old rules." So I think there is, you know, obviously a danger of overreach. I would think that, you know, the governor and others they've watched what's going on in neighboring states, and they kind of are mindful of that.
Right. I think the Democrats aren't that well organized in Indiana. I mean, they you know, the chairman of the party resigned, and then they couldn't find anybody decent. You know, or you know, I shouldn't say couldn't find anybody decent, but you know, he stayed in power because they couldn't find anybody that the party could coalesce around.
Right.
Well, as Will Rogers said, I've never belonged to an organized political party. I'm a Democrat. So
exactly. And so, you know, the Democrats have been just hammered in recent years in Indiana. Yeah. So I don't know.
And they just don't have the numbers to stop the legislation. So, you know, there's not, you know, the Republicans could, you know, hold hearings and have discussions and listen to people around the state and then say, well, we did the Democratic thing and now we're going to vote, and it could very well pass. So
I mean, if I were a Democrat, I'd vote against it and say, you know, look what they did. You know, you need more people like me, so keep me in there.
We've got an election in November where we can sort all this out. So, talking about November 2012, let's talk about the presidential election, which kind of got started with actual votes being cast this week in Iowa, the Iowa caucus.
Yeah.
Where we basically saw a split decision between Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum. Romney, I think, won by 8 votes, but basically they split it. Ron Paul came in a close third, and then everyone else was bringing up the rear.
You know what this says to me is that, you know, in Iowa, certainly the Republicans couldn't decide what's the future of the party. It was a pretty big slap, I think, to the Tea Party that Michelle Bachmann, you know, their poster child, dropped out.
And Rick Perry to some extent. You know, if you look at it, the two front runners are probably, from a fiscal standpoint, the most liberal in terms of spending in government. You know, Romney and Santorum are probably furthest from the ideals of the Tea Party. when you're talking about fiscal conservatives.
Although Santorum is a conservative.
He's social
He's a
conservative.
social conservative.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. You know, it's become a conservative party, but is it going to be a social conservative, you know,
fiscal
faction or
conservative.
fiscal? And,
Right.
You know, there's
And I think there's a fight there over the soul of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
I think they all agree we want to be conservative, but some of them want to be fiscally conservative, and I think you can drop people like Dick Lugar in that you know, into that slot. Fiscally conservative, do the right thing to maintain. Mitch Daniels, I think you can also.
I think if Mitch Daniels had run, you know, if his family had let him come out and play, as the saying was, I think he might have done a lot better.
He could be the because I think there's still you see this kind of cap on the amount of support Romney's getting, and so Republicans and conservatives are looking for the alternative to Romney. Mitch Daniels could very well have been that de facto alternative, and could.
Right.
Could
Well,
be
now Romney was 4 years ago was a big Indianapolis favorite. He was kind of the golden boy for the Indianapolis group, who raised a lot of money for him, including you know, some people from Northwest Indiana who've moved to Indianapolis. And,
Well, and Dan Dumasich, who stays here,
Yeah, sure.
is a big supporter of Romney.
Sure.
So
But you know, you got things in the mix this year. You know, you got Gingrich in the mix this year, and I don't think the showing in Iowa should necessarily count somebody like Gingrich out.
No.
no, I think it's a first cut. You know, treat it like an employment situation. You make your first cut of the applicants that you don't even want to bother interviewing.
Right. Bachman is out.
Exactly.
Perry virtually
He's
is
basically out.
He's basically out. So yeah.
Whether he knows it or not.
Right. Right.
So.
Well, we'll see next Tuesday in New Hampshire, and then about 11 days after that in South Carolina. So
The hits keep coming.
Now when does Indiana? Because last presidential election, Indiana actually became quite an important state because they'd moved their
Right.
primary up.
Well, it'll always be, to my knowledge, it'll always be on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in May.
Yeah.
So, you know, not having a calendar in front of me,
Yep.
I can tell you about
So
it.
yeah, but it'll be May,
Right.
and it'll be fairly
Be
further
fairly
back.
far in the process, right?
So we'll see. Maybe there'll still be a question at that time. We don't
I was
know.
going to say, do you think by the time it gets to Indiana that we're still going to have a viable question of who is going to be the candidate?
I think there's some real possibility.
I think
We
if
did last time.
I think if the people who don't want Romney can coalesce around one alternative, then yes, you could very well have that one-on-one
And Romney's
battle.
got, you know, some strikes against him in terms of, you know, the hardcore Republicans, because, you know, there's
Yeah.
the health care issue.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so there's a big thing for them to go around if they say, you know, we want to oppose Obamacare and there was Romney care, you know, as a similar
Massachusetts,
program,
yeah. Sure.
right? Then they're going to have to figure it out.
Well, we shall see, and we'll be looking forward to that. And along with everything else in the new year, I want to point out to you that we have a new iPad app available for free in the iTunes store. Videos look dynamite on it, look better, much better than looking at it actually on the website. So if you have an iPad, download the free app. You could watch this.
We'll look much more handsome.
As I said, we actually look kind of like the Rat Pack when they're
There you go.
instead of a bunch of rats.
Right. So
Asian rats.
that'll do it for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another Political Roundtable.